I'm Marvin Polis from the City of Edmonton on the roof of Scotia Place. Now, the reason we're on the roof of Scotia Place today is because we're here to talk about green roofs. And I have with me today one of the world's foremost experts on green roofs. His name is Dusty Gedge. He's from the UK. And Dusty, tell me, what is a green roof?
Well, a green roof is a roof that actually has intentional soil and vegetation placed on it.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, there's lots of reasons why you would want to do that. I mean, we're standing here, we're sweating, it's very, very hot. This city, you've got all this glare. You have in Edmonton urban heat island effect. The fact is we design our cities with concrete or with stone or shingle. If we put soil and vegetation back into our city, they'd start to cool the city down. I'll be less hot, you'll be less hot, and we'll all be happy.
For instance, we are standing on a gravel roof right now. What sort of thing would you actually recommend for this kind of building?
Well, I'm from the UK. I mean, a ballasted roof like this weighs about 120 to 150 kgs. You could put about 150 mil of soil and vegetation on this roof, native herbs, native sedums, and they would actually, during this heat, they would evapotranspirate, make people cool, and when it rains, they'd store all the rainwater. And I'm particularly interested because I got involved in this from nature conservation. It's about bringing nature back into the city.
Dusty, tell me a little bit more, in fact, about your background with green roofs.
About 15 years ago, I got involved in a rare species in London, a species of bird found in post-industrial landscapes. And they want to build on these places, so we started to try and get the habitat put back up on the roof. I knew nothing about green roofs then, but since then I went, about 10 years ago, I went to Switzerland and I met my colleague Dr. Stefan Benyson, who's researching insects and butterflies and bees on roofs. And so from a nature conservation background, in terms of how I got involved in green roofs, I now can talk to you about vapor barriers, concrete. I can talk to you about roofs, yeah.
Okay, so in part it's about nature conservation. Are there other benefits to green roofs as well?
Yeah, I mean, my route into it was through nature conservation. But you know, since 2004, and believe me, it was since 2004, we started talking about climate change. Green roofs now fit into that climate change agenda because our cities are getting hotter. We're using more and more air conditioning. If we can cool down our buildings and cool down our city and use less air conditioning, that's good in terms of the carbon equation, and green roofs actually do that. Also, I know recently, last weekend, there was some big floods down in Medicine Hat in Alberta. Can't say that green roofs would have helped that, but certainly in big cities like Edmonton or Calgary, where you get flashy summer storms, really heavy ones, the rainfall that falls on the roof, if it's a green roof, it'll stay there. It won't go down into the street level, and that potentially stops flash floods. I don't know about Canada, but in London, we're increasingly getting these flashy June summer storms. Last year we had 19 tube stations flooded because of a flashy summer storm. So green roofs are part of that activity.
You mentioned climate change and how a green roof can contribute to perhaps the solution, at least part of the solution, by absorbing water?
Yeah, it absorbs water in the system and then it evaporates it back. And the key point here is it absorbs water into the system, it evaporates it back, which then cools the city down.
Less fuel to air condition the buildings.
Yeah.
And I would suppose that also having this living ecosystem on roofs, that would actually absorb CO2 as well?
Yeah, I try to, you know, I'm a great enthusiast of green roofs, and there is a certain degree of carbon sequestration, but I think it's distractionary because actually the main things are, you know, it's good for stormwater, it's good for thermal performance, it's good for cooling the city, it's good for nature conservation, it's good for filtering out air pollutants, and you know, it does a range of things. It's what we call ecosystem services benefits. That's what a green roof does. It doesn't do any one of them big time, it does lots of them medium time.
Okay, so there are some benefits. Now, what about the design issues? Is this easy to do?
Well, it is, you know, I memean, like anything, if it's done well and it's done properly and it's done by people who understand this, then it's not going to cause you a problem. But, you know, the two rules of green roofs or any kind of roofing is A, your roof mustn't leak, and B, it mustn't collapse. So, you know, just because I want to shove plants up on a roof, those are the two most important things.
And that's completely doable, I suppose, with the proper design.
Yeah, you could take this shingle off this building and put a green roof on here.
Okay, tell me about some milestones. Tell me about some projects.
Well, the biggest milestone for me is I campaigned to get a policy in London, and in 2008, the policy was published. It's policy. Well, it's now policy 5A11, and I wrote the technical report to support that policy. So that was a big milestone for me. I've done a number of sort of projects which got a lot of coverage, I managed to persuade Barclays, the bank, to put one on top of their 32-storey tower in Canary Wharf, which is the highest in Europe for nature conservation. So they're two sort of benchmarks. But now I'm designing green roofs all the time. You've got to remember, I was just an activist. I completely unqualified. And now, fortunately, as we said, I'm very honoured. I get asked to come to places like Edmonton, Calgary, and go around the world and talk about what I do.
So what kind of policy changes would be required, like building codes, that sort of thing?
Well, there's always building codes, and I think building codes keep the exile people happy. They love their building codes. Policy is saying, like, we actually want to require people, if they build a building, to put up a green roof. They do that in Tokyo. They do that it's a federal ruling in Switzerland. They do it in something like 38 cities in Germany. Copenhagen has just passed a mandatory requirement, and I do believe in Toronto it's a mandatory requirement over a certain area.
Okay. And what about cost?
Well, it always comes down to cost, but it's going to cost you slightly more. But I'm afraid that cost is worthwhile in terms of what the green roof does over the 25 years, 30 years, 60 years that it's going to be there. You've got to balance the immediate dollar cost against the environmental benefit that roof is going to give you over 50 years. People can always throw dollars at you, but at the end of the day, I'm interested in the environment.
I suppose that there's a reduced operating cost because of the insulation factor, more efficient air conditioning, more efficient heating?
You can't reduce your insulation, but it gives you additionality, I would say. It gives you more cooling in the summertime. The payback period in Germany is about 25 to 30 years. I don't see that from a city perspective, and it's not for me to tell Edmonton as a city what to do. It's about the city, it's about the health of the city. It's not about an individual building, and green vegetation in cities is very, very important to the health of the city.
You just said that you're not going to tell the city of Edmonton what to do, but you know what? I'm going to ask for your advice. What do you think Edmonton should do?
It's not for me to advise Edmonton what it should do. My personal belief is that cities across the temperate zone in the north need to really be looking at bringing vegetation soil back into their cities to keep them cool. And I'm not too sure. I know there's a number of green roofs in Edmonton, and I think from what I understand the city is quite proactive on this. And I just hope it takes that forward and absorbs those ideas, but also be careful of the naysayers, who don't want any change.
Well, given our location and climate here in the city of Edmonton, are there any special considerations for us, or is this just a slam dunk?
It's a slam dunk, I think. It's so hot that, I think it's just a really good idea,
As we stand here now, Dusty, it's about plus 30 degrees Celsius. If this were January, it might be minus 30 degrees Celsius.
Well, I realise that too, yeah. But I think the summer is the actually all-important one, because I think actually keeping things cool in the summertime is a big deal. There is some benefit in the winter. It varies. I wouldn't like to make an assessment on that because you have big snows. I just think it's just something that most cities will absorb and do. They're doing it throughout the Midwest, in Minneapolis and places like that. I think Edmonton should embrace it.
So as you said, completely doable?
Completely doable.
And where can people get more information about green roofs?
Well, my organisation is called livingroofs.org, but there's also greenroofs.org, which is based in Toronto, Stephen Peck's organisation, and I recommend that too.
Terrific. Thanks for joining us today, Dusty.
Thank you.